potato, 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 potato. Sometimes we ditch the skin to eat what it's holding in. Sometimes we'd rather please have just the outside with cheese. They have eyes, but they do not have faces. I don't know if their feelings get hurt by just hanging around in dark places where they only can stare at the dirt.
Welcome to Walt's Wanderings, where in each episode I will take you along as I explore the world. It may say something about me that I like the quirky and the offbeat, and that's why when I'm traveling, if I see a sign for the world-famous mystery spot or the largest ball of twine, I have to stop and check it out. In this episode, we're going to visit some of the more unusual tourist attractions that have caught my eye as I've been traveling. I have driven across the United States several times, and I'm often distracted by such things as the Cadillac Ranch near Amarillo, Texas. From Interstate 40, it's possible to see these 10 cars partially buried in the ground. Why? Why not? Near Los Angeles, I had to stop at the famous giant donut that marks Randy's Donuts. I was lucky enough to catch an Inglewood police car at the drive-thru window. How stereotypical is that? The officers did not seem happy about the photo I was taking, but I liked it. Driving across Kansas, I heard about the Garden of Eden in Lucas. Friends who are living in Salina, Kansas suggested I go. I'm glad I made the detour about 20 miles north of Interstate 70 because it is my nominee for the weirdest tourist attraction I've ever visited. Samuel Dinsmore was in his 60s when in 1905 he felt compelled to tell the story of Adam and Eve, including showing Eve and other biblical tales, and then he depicted other occupations, including a Civil War soldier, perhaps a tribute to his own service in the Union Army. He had also created an American flag. He built a house out of concrete but made it to look like a log cabin. When he was 81 years old, he married a 22-year-old. Not surprisingly, after he died in 1932, she outlived him by a good many years, and she was one of the last people to be receiving a Civil War pension. Knowing his time on Earth was coming near an end, Dinsmore built a concrete mausoleum with a concrete coffin with a glass lid. When I visited many years ago, I was told that Mr. Dinsmore had stipulated in his will that admission to the Garden of Eden should be a dime, and that for another 5 cents you could go into the mausoleum and see Mr. Dinsmore rotting under glass. After I had driven that far and had already sprung for the 10-cent admission, I pretty much had to go the extra nickel and go into the mausoleum. Sure enough, there he was. No photos were allowed of the deceased Mr. Dinsmore, which is probably just as well. The crypt was also made to look like a log cabin, and it's now overgrown with ivy. I understand the admission prices have increased since I was last there. I was surprised when many years later I was reading a novel by a writer friend, Scott Heim, and he had a crucial scene of the novel set at the Garden of Eden. The novel is in awe if you want to check it out. In Lisbon, I did all of the main touristy things, but I had heard about the Puppetry Museum. Well, in Portuguese, it is the Museu de Marioneta, and I'm sorry about my bad Portuguese there. It was a surprising find, and even though I'm not that into puppets, I did find it quite interesting. It was very uncrowded. There was a couple there, but I spent most of my visit with the only other person there, a man who was visiting from Colombia. We both seemed happy to have someone with whom to share our comments about the unusual puppets we saw. There were puppets from all over the world. It is truly an international art form, and puppets have existed for centuries as a form of entertainment and at times political commentary. There are puppets depicting the French Revolution, and there is a puppet of Joan of Arc. Although the world in Portuguese is marionette, and there were some marionettes on display, many of the items displayed were other forms of puppets. The museum is a little out of the way, but if you want to explore a part of Lisbon that is not trampled to death with tourists and see something a little different, I'd recommend it. It is on TripAdvisor's list of suggested attractions. Traveling Interstate 15 from Salt Lake City to where my friend and I would be staying in West Yellowstone, Montana, we saw a sign for the Idaho Potato Museum. If you're in Idaho, how could you not stop? It was one of the most fun little museums I've ever visited. Everything from singing potato sacks, I can still hear the song in my head, potato, 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 to a large collection of potato mashers and a display of pretty much every Mr. Potato Head known to mankind. In addition to the fun and cute stuff, They had, for instance, the world's largest Pringle and a letter from the governor of Idaho to Vice President Dan Quayle correcting his spelling of potato. They also had things on more serious parts of the potato history, including the important role the potato has played in the economy of Idaho and how it was celebrated in festivals and with potato queens. There were facts on potato production and processing and how potatoes influenced world history. There are now more Irish people outside of Ireland than on the Emerald Isle because of the potato famine. The Great Hunger, as the Irish called it. That forced migration of millions of starving people spread the Irish all over the world. The museum also had a baked potato bar where, for a very reasonable price, a young man would assemble you a baked potato with whatever fixings you desired. The potatoes were so large, we made that our dinner. We had, after all, just learned of how amazingly nutritious those tubers are. I even had to get a baked potato ornament to add to my collection to remember the occasion. Driving across the Yukon, I happened upon the Signpost Forest. Like many of the world-famous tourist attractions I have visited, I had never heard of this one until I saw it. I had stopped for gas in Watson Lake in the Yukon Territory and had doubled back to check out the Northern Lights Space and Science Center. I was disappointed to find it closed in spite of the large open sign. But had I not gone back to the museum, I never would have noticed this bizarre collection of posts and signs had I not turned around. I had to park and investigate. I wandered around, confused about what I was seeing, until I came across the entry arch and a sign explaining the history of this bizarre place. The story is that in 1942, as the Alcan Highway was being completed, a United States soldier was tasked with the assignment of erecting a post listing distances to various cities. Homesick as he was, he added a sign for his hometown of Danville, Illinois. Other soldiers started adding their hometowns, and soon more posts were required, and the idea spread and continues to this day and has become a historic landmark and public park, complete with a picnic area. Driving the Alcan Highway, short for Alaska-Canada Highway, I learned a lot about this amazing marvel of engineering. Early in 1942, not long after the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor and seized some of the Aleutian Islands, the United States government became concerned about being able to resupply and protect Alaska. They could not count on defending Alaska and Western Canada by sea when most of the Pacific Fleet was at the bottom of Pearl Harbor. So they launched an ambitious plan to strike a land route through the frozen wilderness from British Columbia to the Alaskan coast. In less than 8 months, 1,700 miles of the road was built. It since has been rerouted several times and shortened to a more direct route and now stretches only about 1,300 miles, and it's now fully paved and much improved. As the road was built and then moved, equipment was abandoned in the woods. As it has been found over the years, it's been relocated to this park as a tribute to the men and women who achieved this engineering marvel. I'll have more to say about the Alcan Highway and my drive through the Yukon and Alaska in future episodes of Walt's Wanderings. A couple of motorcyclists who are also visiting the Signpost Forest were nice enough to take a photo of my visit. I have stopped at a lot more unusual tourist attractions, including a giant carved wooden beaver in Beaver Lodge, Alberta, Canada, so there'll be more stories to tell in future installments. Are you one of those people who has to stop at unusual tourist attractions? What is the strangest tourist site you've ever visited? Let me know in the comments, and please like and subscribe. Join me next time on Walt's Wanderings when we'll visit my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and talk about some of the unusual things there. Come along for the adventure. Stay tuned.